Hello and welcome everyone to Ananke's Festival of Literature. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome uh, Naveen Kishore, who is Ananke's advisor and an ally and somebody very dear. So, welcome, Naveen.
Thank you, Sabine.
So, a little bit about Naveen Kishore, even though he needs no introduction. Naveen Kishore is a theater lighting designer, photographer, poet, publisher, and founder of Seagull Books, which was established in 1982. Under Kishore's direction, Seagull has published English translations of more than 500 books by major African, European, Asian, and Latin American writers. In 2005, Kishore launched Seagull Books London to reach a wider international readership. 6 years later, in 2011, he expanded the organization further, establishing the Seagull School of Publishing with the aim of training the next generation of publishers, editors, and book designers in India. For his contribution to publishing, Kishore has been made a Chevalier de, and I cannot pronounce this word properly, Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Letters in 2014 by the government of France and received the Goethe Medal from the Federal Republic of Germany in 2013. In 2021, he was recognized by Words Without Borders with the Ottaway Award for the promotion of international literature. He also became the first recipient of César de Michelis Prize, awarded by independent Venetian publishers Marsilio Editori in conjunction with Ca' Foscari University of Venice for outstanding publishing projects. Kishore's works of poetry, Knotted Grief, and Mother Muse Quintet have been published by Speaking Tiger, with the former being translated and published in several countries. So welcome, Naveen.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabine. Since you want me to do something like an afterword, I thought I would turn to a journal that I do not actually physically keep, and in which I do notes to self. So you will have to bear with the fragmentary nature of my thought process, and I hope that it makes sense to you. Afterwards, note to self. I was reading a conversation between a writer I greatly admire, Alexander Hemon, a Bosnian American writer born in the mid-60s, and Teju Cole, the Nigerian American writer who is currently been getting a lot of attention in the US. Some of what they talked about made me think as follows. Fiction and non-fiction. Truth and its opposite. As if the non turns the writer's truth into untruth. Also, the question of the static truth as the only fixed reality versus the more elastic, evolving, and dynamic, constantly changing truth that does so in one way for the writer and perhaps in another way for the reader. Hemon says something I liked. I quote, "In Bosnia, there are no words that are equivalent to fiction and non-fiction, or that convey the distinction between them. That is not to say that there is no truth or falsehood. Rather, the stress is on storytelling. The closest translation of non-fiction would really be true stories." And this from Teju Cole. Painters, For example, I know that everything is a combination of what's observed, what's imagined, what's overheard, and what's been done before. Is Monet a non-fiction painter and Ingres a fiction painter? The interesting thing is that both of these writers are a part of a marketplace of labels. And the market, as we all know, categorizes for the sake of its own conveniences. And writers know this. All one wishes for is to be allowed the pleasure of being dragged into a space where one has not been to before. A place where this truth is created. The labels do not matter and need to be ignored, as long as storytelling is at the heart of that which is being narrated. Now, these ruminations appear inadequate in the face of a new reality. This coating of dust that has settled over all of us. The truth is that it has cleared the air and the rivers at one level, and at another, it has challenged our notions of fiction and its opposite, the non. No one knows the true nature of the beast. Guesswork and doses of scientific conjectures leading to educated guesses passing off as truth. And yet, this long pause, pause. Imagine walking into a space that invites you to empty your ears of sound, the street, the machine that cushioned you here, the car door, the dark glasses that come off your nose, your foot crunch, the briefest of walks, the glass door you push is the last thing you will hear. Exit the world you know. Enter. Pause. Not a whisper or hint, only the deliberate suddenness with which our lives were abducted, kidnapped, seized, trapped into the eeriness of the new word, lockdown, forced down our throats as if to choke us into silence. This last, italics, is one more variant of a thought that hounds me. Here is another, also in italics. We know they are trying harder to control us and our lives, our thoughts, our every movement. No longer a thing of futuristic novels. It is here, it is now. Nothing new or amazing. We have all across generations grown up with different forms of control by people in power. There was a time before this fractured time, as there will be time after. The question is whether this fracturing was man-made. After all, time, at least for me, has always been steadfast, at least in its stillness, motion, its ability to adapt to itself, as in adapting to time and circumstance, maybe, and the ability to multitask while being nimble-toed as it sidesteps all impediment and carries on, regardless. No stopping. Time stood still on the mottled floor, slate gray on steel, matte, the floor and incline away from her, gentle slope pushing herself back from the waist, swishing down the ramp like Naomi, or a Parisian rage, she glides amidst the flashing bulbs. At the end of the ramp lies the floor, a different grey. Walk on the water, step by step. You know how. Or sink into the riverbed, drown, pause. The only answer this strange traditional time has thrown at us is that there is a lot of time in hand, however anxious it may be in its design and nomenclature, however irrational the time. Then again, as I keep saying to Varun, my musician son, it's okay to not have answers in this time of our vast floundering. Struggle, hesitate, falter. The uncertain nature of a disease versus nature's attempt to finally cry halt and appear to take charge, to course correct, even to resist. I also keep saying to the powers that govern us that it's okay also to not know your way into the darkness, but you need to let us, your citizens, see that you are trying, like the rest of us, to find a way out. Instead, we get doublespeak and subterfuge and reprimand for asking questions. On earth, a God host gives order to nature. Which God shall I cry to? Whose axe will answer me? No longer citizens, we are swiftly reduced to being supplicants in our own land. Nothing is denied us, everything is denied. We can do exactly what we wish to, provided we ask the questions they want us to ask. To criticize is to self immolate. Beg instead for forgiveness? For what? Or else face charges of sedition. Imagine the weight of this word in 2020, or for that matter, 2025, when the simplest thing in a right winged majoritarian state, fast getting rid of its liberal disguise to slip into a pristine and pure fascism, is to find yourself under permanent arrest without recourse to any kind of legal support. Prove your innocence. But to whom? The judiciary is an extension of the executive, no longer playing seesaw on scales balanced by a woman forced into blindness. Purity of judgment, no longer just control, all is controlled. Our worst algorithms have come home to haunt us. The nightmare is no longer something we dream up. It is dreamt on our behalf with unfailing regularity. And we get what you and I have often shared in our letters: new laws to keep us under surveillance. In India, we now have a variety of identification papers, smart cards, voter ID cards, taxation cards, supposedly for our own good. Everything is passed into law, quietly under the cloak of the pandemic. Authority is allowed to do anything with our liberty, our mind, our physical incarceration. It hacks into every part of our individual, unique, private life selves. Mind control. This is not new. The litany of unlearned lessons must be exhausting. A certain resignation must surely set in. We have walked this way before, in life and in literature, and yet we must carry on. The thing about bankrupt ears is the chiseled sight, enhanced smell, the tactility of the erotic, touch, and movement, the latent Nureyev in me twirling on toes that have turned twinkle, the silver that runs the length of the left wall, applauding the dance, leap, twirl, pause. Nothing human shall remain human. To dehumanize. Again, not new this. Our country is well on its way to an apartheid of Muslims, but it won't stop there. Lights that blink butterflies around your flower eyes. You've let the sun stare at you for much too long. Chairs sit atop the ledge that overlooks the martini waters of a cool, dry river as you fish your noontime away. Where did you think you were? Where do you want to be? Pause. This is us for the rest of our lives. Who knows? All I know and share is this anger. But you and I are far too reasonable beings, as in able to reason beings. This causes difficulties. We see the simultaneity of both despair and hope as intertwined beings, twins that were never severed at birth, but instead remained glued to each other like a bad quick fix advertisement. This makes us hope, strangely, and regardless, no matter how dark it gets, I don't have the words, I have the words. I think I have said this before, but it bears repeating. I never subscribed to labels like postmodern, which in any case is well out of the door nowadays, being a transient, even temporary phenomenon. Nor did I ever have faith in one grand order imposing itself on our world. So, yes, when all that we grew up believing slipped into a fluid state and turned into something else, the philosophies we also needed to be packed away and be replaced by fresh thinking. We fall back on the intuitive, not just in the way we traverse learning and acquired knowledge, but also that which we experience. This is not a position of defeat. On the contrary, but it does result in immense personal suffering. Our inner landscape gets mauled, fractured, like the time around us. The intuitive, this time ringed by single quote marks, is a source of strength because no one, no government, no corporation can take this away from us. Lie on the bed at the bottom of the blue. Watch the orange from the river run, make its way up, motionless reverie that plays with the clouds as time lies on her back. Recline, a chair that embraces her body as it softens the dailiness of her life. Draw the drapes, and let drowsy eyelids have their way. Dream asleep. There are times when bearing witness with all the weight of many lifetimes that the phrase bears is almost thrust upon us, almost as if time itself chose us to be the ones. Through these months of my pausing, I did make many notes, as did others around the world, I am sure. Keeping notes is something you will be familiar with. It requires space within one's head to respond without too much artifice to what we record, explore and receive, and make what we may of it. Makeup images, masks, a life in theater, performing the masks we wear. Your name in globes of light, silver-lined bricks that reflect your fame, pale gray wine glasses with gold rims that long for your lips. The feast beckons, even as the clocks chime the end of day, the beginning of day. Translate the times. Remember that the act of translation is not a deliberate one. The truth of imbibing, of learning. Theater, for example, was a huge learning, is that you're not practicing a strategy or even a method. What gets translated is the practice. Learning as it translates into a dailiness of practice. The practice of surviving in the arts, in publishing, in a chosen field of cultural conditions, all of which then translates into the act of reading, the passions of all that is possible to do, to create, to midwife. Because both as theatre practitioners and as publishers, we make possible. We are conduits through which things happen. Or the translation we speak of is a constant state of practice, never static or frozen in time, therefore responsive and dynamic to the moment. So the theater remains the single most vital part of my playing, publishing. Pause. A way with word objects, the placing of one with another, the relationships that as a writer you manage to carve out of the everyday, matchmaking, or simply breaking age-old rhythms, creating fresh music where none existed, imposing grand, silver, not antique, definitely not opulent, distinctly blue of pedigree, overwhelmed with desire to touch, to gaze upon the written words, vying for attention amongst the mountains, gold, silver, and black shadows carved out of the day-night light, piled high like books, subject by subject, the binding, hand-stitched steel, the lettering on the spine, burnished silver in the golden light. Pause. Fast forward. Play. My day begins and ends with reading, writing. Here are a few thoughts from others that I offer to you, because they resonate with my feelings and that which we are all undergoing. Perhaps. This is Iris Murdoch in The Bell. Quote, what are the marks of innocence? Candor, a beautiful word, truthfulness, simplicity, a quiet, involuntary bearing of witness, my emphasis. And this from Graham Greene in The Quiet American. You can rule me out. I said, I'm not involved. I repeated, it had been an article of my creed, the human condition being what it was. Let them fight, let them love, let them murder. I would not be involved. My fellow journalists call themselves correspondents. I preferred the title of reporter. I wrote what I saw. I took no action. Even an opinion is a kind of action. This last is, of course, impossible as we are discovering. Our moral and political involvement and the variety of motives it reveals. There is no longer space for the entirely neutral, nor do I desire this mode of being. There is also this other thing called rage. I do not for a moment think our rage is misplaced or redundant. Yes, it needs to be harnessed, not because rage is seen as a negative luxury, but because it needs to channel itself into action. This is nothing new. You know it better than I can articulate it. All I can say is that most lack the depth of reading that simultaneously produces both rage and its immediate opposite, instantaneous calm. This calm is what most lack. This calm is what leads us to clarity, as in a precise reading of situations. Nothing accidental about the way we are being subjugated. This is quite bluntly put into a malevolent plan. It has its origins in every single fascist handbook. We know all this. There is no time to waste, not on spending our rage, by now calmer already, on shallow journalistic forays or writing in ways that attempts to see their side of things. Neutrality. I am thinking of so many of our writers and poets and playwrights and filmmakers who are saying it is time to take sides without leaving any room for retreating from our positions is the only way now to fight. I am alarmed, anxious, full of despair and longing to sacrifice everything I have to achieve an action that bears some kind of fruit, however long term. But it is wishful thinking. We need to come up with ways of continuing in the only way we can, by doing. Doing. This doing what we do, our writing, our getting on the air and appealing, our trips to sites of protest. In India, Shaheen Baghs, where a women-led protest against the new draconian Citizenship Act is taking place. Our JNUs, our Jamias, the universities as spaces for free thinking and therefore dissent. And now this moment, our farmers' protests. Our presence too is a form of activism. Don't let the despair fool you into believing otherwise. Notes to self. Interestingly, the night has become just another word for the dark. If I push this further, this bit of the night dark is friendlier, the kind that suggests safety and warmth because there is light, literally, when one is in the supposed safety of one's home, with the night just within reach, safely distanced by glass windows that slide shut, as well as its opposite. The possibility that an opening is within reach is a fine feeling. Of course, there is the other truth. You and I succumb to exhaustion, both mental and physical. At least we used to. Now the physical for some of us is no longer a truth, but a hope. One stays awake out of pent-up energy and labeled at times as anxiety. You only plan to publish what, in your opinion, needs to see the light of day, the relevance to a new readership, the attention you as publisher devote to their reading spans. That is not your job. Your job is to publish and make all attempts to find a readership. Patterns of readership are always changing. Different technologies offering varied ways of imbibing literature will always be there for the printed book to cope with. But the trick is not to fight technology. The idea is to continue to make beautiful books and let the work you publish speak for itself. There are enough readers for every so-called and often imagined non-reader. A combination of different levels of trust and instinct. The instinct of others who you welcome into the curatorial space that you inhabit while deciding which book needs doing. The selection happens at my level as publisher through my own reading and therefore by extension a circle of affection created by colleagues, the reading of translators one has grown to trust, other publishers, a circle of authors who share their own feelings of the kind of text we should look at, accidental stumbling into books through conversations, travel, book fairs, more conversations. Each one of us has our own methods. Mine are trust and relationship based and strongly laced with a level of comfort with what others call risk taking. I do not see myself as having a front seat to anything. Our world changes far too swiftly. To stay in the driving seat for any length of time is in itself an act of resistance. This is what our work in the arts is about. To resist current ways or modes of art practiced by any group of individuals and institutions is not the way. One needs to constantly be a part of our world and aloof within it. Aloofness is actually a positive condition if you look at it from the point of view of not allowing any kind of strictures or structures by either the governments in place or the creators of the artistic production to hinder you. You need to carve your own way of being a part of the overall human condition, one that is fraught with fear at this moment. Integrity is as much a personal political state as it is a public political one. I don't think our ability to discuss ideas will come to an end because of the technology of idiocy that is deliberate and seductive in its lack of engagement with anything that has meaning and depth and the slightest shade of the intuitive. Now, more than ever, we need to read and concentrate. Even more important is the necessity to write, or as Brecht would have done, sing with the times. The new normal will not necessarily be a compassionate and kind one, despite my naive romanticism about it. It will be dark. You need to keep writing more than ever. And yes, the writing will never stop. Yes, I will grant you the fact that it may shift platforms, even be writing that is spoken, sung across emails and phones, but the ideas must not stop from breathing, circulating while we breathe. The virtue of being inventive. Inventive is an intriguing word. It suggests that you suspect strategy here. No. Each area of activity and concern are explored as we respond to issues, the causes that these times we live in throw up, and so on. Inventing solutions, not for survival in a monetary sense, but in the sense of inventive content. Not just us as books, but as activity. And yes, you guessed, as practice. We invent so that we may do. You engage in conversation with the times. No running away. Survival is an accidental byproduct of all that we do. The opposite is unthinkable. Later, when you were to ask me about what happened, I would open wide. my mouth and show you the sores on my tongue. To repeat what I started with, this time in italics. These ruminations appear inadequate in the face of a new reality. No one knows the true nature of the beast. Guesswork and doses of scientific conjectures leading to educated guesses passing off as truth. A related thought, photographs. What is the truth or the known truth of an image? For example, my photographs that claim to be a way of channeling my rage towards an act that I recognize as creative. So creative as truth or as fiction? Who cares? The photographs need to work. The rest is distraction. There is also the time-honored question of the photograph as testimony, as witness, as proof. Look at the empty streets of New York and Paris, particularly during the time of the pandemic. How much of all this is truth being created through the eyes of the photographer while freezing the moments that are unfolding before the camera lens? Choice and omission. Choice as erasure. For what you leave out is gone, disappears. Or do the photographs only point towards that which is left out? At this moment, everything is left out, and the photographs need not resort to selecting frames. Point and shoot at the vast emptying. And what of the text as a written practice that accompanies photographs in books, catalogs, exhibitions? Something creating little fissures between the two, almost slyly pointing you in a direction away from the truth and the unfolding nowness of Gaza, where real-time images numb the self, when nothing is left out. No matter what you frame, there is more and more and more of the same outside the frame, making mockery of omission and selection. How may some of these thoughts engage with history, in particular with the amnesia of nations who forget with as much ease as they bomb the mountains of Afghanistan while their own backyards are full of injustice? Then there are so many of us who cannot forget, cannot easily extricate themselves from history. There is no way to leave history. Partitions, for example. You can leave countries, but you cannot avoid carrying their histories within you, even as you forcibly migrate. The history is in your body, as it were, the body as a habitat, one that carries stories back to bearing witness. For all that you refuse to forget, except now. In this time, I have repeatedly labeled irrational and what others have called unpredictable. There are no punctuations, for all appears to be fluid. The days, the hours have been rendered, or is it sundered, meaningless? And what of the accompanying fear? Pause. I leave you with a reoccurring dream. I remember that it was an old projector, the kind that shuddered with each revolution of the reel. I also recall that there was no particular chronology or fixed order to play them, no fixed dream, only a dim memory of stepping outside the dream I am dreaming, but making sure that I am still in the dream I have stepped into, while I continue to dream the one I was dreaming in the first place, before I wet my feet in the blood that was all over the floor. I had to step out of it into the clear, cold spring, flowing in the dream I had just stepped into, the one I had begun to use, to wash my feet, rid my soles of the blood, cleanse them, all the while keeping the blood-soaked dream playing behind my eyelids like a memory grown dim, wiped out by constant replay. I continue to step out, my feet wet from a dream yet to be dreamt. My eyelids swollen, full of the dream they are rewinding, like the one before, trying to rub the blood of my feet, jumping, stop, start, no longer stepping out of the dream into the blood. The water is no longer a clear spring. But if it is, it changes swiftly into blood, blood, blood. The reels are out of sync again. The film often stops, out of breath, or a torn sprocket needing to be fixed, spliced again, restart, start the water in this dream, the one my dim memory is screening, the one I stepped into from the earlier one, or the one before that is rising. It is no longer water, it is the blood that soaks into my memory, rising. I step into the dream, the one I was dreaming in the first place. Even as I step out of this dream and walk into the next one, the one with the clear spring water, no longer clean. The blood has risen. I no longer remember that the film has no fixed dream. The projector shudders, grinding to a halt as the water drains out of the dream, drowning me in blood. Pause.
To criticize is to self immolate. Beautiful, beautiful, Naveen. Thank you so much for giving us the pleasure of listening to your beautiful words. And with this, I'd like to conclude Ananke's Festival of Literature 2025, and I hope to see everyone next year. Thank you.